Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the Flight Sim world. This is Viper Strike 95. I hope you're all doing well here today on this afternoon flight. This morning flight. We're here in beautiful Oregon here today, and we're here to explore our newest national park in the series. Yes, we're covering Crater Lake National Park. So we're getting ready to cover this national park very soon. But if you guys don't know about Crater Lake, this absolutely gorgeous national park is located in Oregon. It's right around the southeast part of the state, right in the southern half part of the state, here in Oregon. Not that far northwest of Klamath Falls, Oregon. This beautiful lake contains all of Crater Lake plus the areas around it. So we'll be flying through quite a few mountains and beautiful scenery stuff as we get our way over to Crater Lake. Before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone in the chat. I hope you're all well. I'll be posting the link to the National Park website if you guys want to learn more about the park. Outside of my notes, of course, in the message, guys, as well. So before we get started, let's go over today's flight plan, shall we, for this morning. So here's our flight plan this morning. We'll start here at Horn Airport, just outside of Kingston, Oregon. From there, we'll head east. We'll fly 37 nautical miles. We'll get to Mount Jefferson. We'll fly around Mount Jefferson for a bit. Then from here, we'll head down over to the Bend area at South Sister. We'll check out the Three Sister Mountains here in Oregon. Fly near Mount Bachelor, and we'll make our first stop here at Crescent Lake State Airport. 502 will be our first stop up the stream. Our second stop will take us through Crater Lake National Park. We'll fly over Mount Thielsen and a couple of mountains here over the campground, Mount Bailey. Then we'll go through the Pumas Desert. Then we'll go over Pumas Desert. Then from there, we'll fly around the entire of the lake. From Hillman, we'll go for Hillman Creek, Little Owl Walk. Then there's the Cleetwood Trail that gives us to the boat, is through Wizard Island. Then we'll make a landing here at Mount Scott. Then we'll go over through to the Phantom Ship, Little Island. Then from there we'll go through Wizard Island. We'll make a stop here, and then from there we'll go through Union Peak, and finally make our final stop here at Prospect State Airport. That is going to be our flight plan this morning. Should be a simple flight plan. Beautiful area. So I'm going to say hello to everyone in chat. We have a Bonnie's player, my good friend. Good to see you. Definitely check out his streams. He does all sorts of stuff, from Microsoft Flight Sim to X-Plane to DCS to Daisy. He does all sorts of games. A great guy. Love his streams. Nice and chill. Kind of what I am too. So yes, we're going to take the Sun Savage Cub today. I think this would be a great aircraft for today's flight. Good old Savage Cub. Really capable bush plane. I think it's perfect for. So again, this being based off the Super Cub, it should be a ridiculously easy plane to get started up and going. Like I said, this should be an easy plane to get. You're more than welcome, Bonnie's player. So we're gonna get ready to get going here. So yeah, good Savage Cub. I think this would be perfect. It can take off from just about anywhere, and more importantly too, Savage Cub is just the kind of plane, very popular bush aircraft. So get up in the sky. We'll talk about Crater Lake National Park as we get up and going. And I picked the early sunrise. I think this would be a good time to finally get this National Park series. So we're going to be climbing up to our first part of the lake. We'll be climbing up to around 4,500 feet above sea levels. Nice thing about this plane, though, really easy. It's pretty stable. So beautiful sunrise here in Oregon. This should be a sign things to come here. There's a beautiful sunrise here in this part of Oregon. Absolutely gorgeous. Here in Oregon. So we're going to head our way to Crater Lake for a bit. If you guys know my Discord, I've been putting information on each of the parks. And I mainly put videos on for people who've actually explored these parks. You guys should definitely check those out. Well, I put really cool pictures and some really neat stuff. So for next week, we only have one stream next week, which is going to be our game day flights. We'll be back on Friday. We'll be in Bristol, in England. We'll be in Bristol, and that's because we're going to be covering a soccer matchup, and not just any soccer matchup. It might just be the biggest game in English football. And that's because we're covering Liverpool and Manchester United, the two most decorated clubs in England, going against each other. And this rivalry is more than just based on the teams. These themselves also are rivals too. So, should be fun. I'll be posting information about that on Monday, about the Liverpool-Manchester United rivalry game. So, you all would be quite excited to learn more about it. I'm very well excited for that part when we do eventually get up to. So looking forward to that one. Speaking about the game day stuff that just happened yesterday, it turns out, I said the Red River rivalry could have gone either way yesterday, and I was actually right. The fact was Texas pulled off a massive upset over Oklahoma, 23-6, which was absolutely huge for Texas to get their season back on track. They needed a big win against Oklahoma, and they did, and they won the game. Big win for Texas. However, that was not the craziest thing. The crazy thing was Indiana. They came to Oregon and absolutely just got the Ducks, 30-20. They absolutely beat them up. Oregon did not stand a chance, and Indiana just dominated. They are for real. Yes, the days of Indiana football being a joke are over, and they're look like to be an even better team than they were last year. Maybe we might talk about Indiana national champions in football. Other notable games: Alabama beat Missouri 27-24. Good win for the Tide. This should be going in really nicely for Alabama against Tennessee. Maybe the third Saturday in October would be a pretty good one to do. But again, I had Liverpool, Manchester United, since I wanted to change from American football over to soccer. I wanted to do something different because I want to keep things variety. I want to have some variety in those streams as well. Georgia beat Auburn. LSU beat South Carolina. Utah upsets 21st ranked Arizona State. Texas A&M beats Florida. And Ohio State trounces Illinois. Pretty big stuff. So that's the college football weekend ended. I then went to the Louisville City soccer game last night. In person, of course. And it was a pretty good affair, honestly, for Louisville City. They won 1-0 against Miami FC. Don't confuse them for the MLS's Inter Miami. Some people will confuse it. Don't. But Louisville FC has clinched the player shield for the USL for the second straight year. And if they can win the next 2 games, they would have one of the best seasons ever for the USL, and that's looking very good. Now this time they better win. They better finish the job and win the championship for Louisville City. Yeah, big win for the club. Couldn't be happier for Louisville City. We got a great little club. Yeah, the scenery here is absolutely gorgeous this morning. No surprise at all. So, not too much sports. I don't really want to do too much of it, of course. Going on as well. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Crater Lake National Park as we get to around 4,000. So Crater Lake National Park is located in southern Oregon. It was established all the way back in 1902. It's the 5th oldest national park in the system. And it's the only national park here in Oregon. This park encompasses the caldera of Crater Lake, which was a remnant of Mount Mazama, a destroyed volcano, and the surrounding hills and forest. Now, the lake itself is around 1,949 feet, which is the deepest lake here in the United States, the second deepest in North America, and the 10th deepest lake in the world. But technically, if you really want to go to the deepest lake, you would have to go all the way to Russia to find it, and that's Lake Baikal. You also have the Great Lake of Tanganyika, Africa, the Caspian Sea, and then Viedma in Argentina. O'Higgins, San Martin, the Lake Lago Argentino, Lake Malawi, and Isyk-Kul in Kyrgyzstan are deeper than Great Lake, than the crater. So, definitely very important. But one really cool thing about this lake, is definitely the view. Due to its deepness and stuff, makes it a really beautiful view of the lake. The caldera itself, the rim ranges between 7,000 and 8,000 feet above sea level. And the park itself encompasses around 183,000 acres of land, with no streams that flow in and out of it. So all water in the lake is eventually lost to evaporation. And the lake's water has a striking blue hue and refilled entirely from precipitation from rain and snow. So yeah, this is Crater Lake National Park, an absolute gem of a park here in the United States. An absolute gem of a park. Absolute gem of a national park. One of our most beautiful and scenic, of course. Trying to get this back into the right order again. So for this week of games, of course, as well, one of the more interesting things about Crater Lake, of course, it was formed from a volcano. Now, this was the 5th oldest park, and it was actually established on May 22nd, 1902, 123 years ago. And in 2022, 527,000 people made their way to Crater Lake. However, nowadays, when you look at the reports, when you look at the national park visits, Crater Lake National Park, according to 2024, on the more recent one for Crater Lake, 314,000 people visited the park. And actually, 504,000 people visited Crater Lake in 2024. And that's at least recreational visits. So, not too many people visit here, but for those who do, you guys will be treated to some absolutely amazing stuff. So, also another news for Firefly Air, you guys aren't been aware of it for a while. I think our next hub is, of course, our next hub is more likely going to be Cape Town. According to Six Knots, is Cape Town, South Africa. So that'll be our brand new hub. Um, but due to the fact we have the route limit coming up, we had to get rid of two of our hubs, and that means our original West US hub and one of our two South America hubs are being retired. That'll be Lake Tahoe and Quito, which is a shame because Quito is actually a really cool airport. And flying in the Andes was definitely really neat, but I understand why no one really used it too much. Which is a real shame, but I guess that's just the casualties of hubs and stuff not being really used. So, but yeah, we're gonna have a hub in Cape Town. So this should be really interesting. They'll have a South African hub. I wonder what kind of route Six Knots got planned for that. Should be should be interesting to point out, of course. Thank you, Typhon, for dealing with a potential bot. So we're gonna get. Look at this. Look at the scenery, man. This is absolutely. But this is good enough to take a screenshot. Even though we're not at the national park, I'm gonna put that in my Discord. That's a beautiful. This sim, man, is just breathtaking. This that is just gorgeous, man. Absolutely stunning here. This is Detroit Lake State, by the way. Recreation area, Detroit Lake. Like, there's so many beautiful areas in this simulator that I just love. Of course, I'm not going to be on the camera thing for too long because, well, if you notice, this thing has no autopilot. It's a Super Cub. Super Cubs are older planes and they don't really have room for autopilot. But yeah, absolutely just breathtaking. We'll get ready to talk more about Crater Lake once we get past Mount Jefferson. We'll talk a bit more about the national park. This here is the beautiful and absolutely gorgeous Mount Jefferson. So, one of the many peaks here in this part of Oregon, of course, part of the Cascade Range. Absolutely gorgeous area, Oregon. And we're doing pretty good here. We're just cruising around 159 nautical miles to our final stop. We're cruising at 109 knots. Pretty quick, by the way. I know it's tough without the autopilot. Finally get things done. Of course, for other sports this week, for the NFL this week, my Indianapolis Colts will take on the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to host them again this week. Um, wait, the Broncos and Jets are already here right now. Oh yeah, Broncos and Jets are already playing because it's already in London. They're playing in London right now, so that's why the Broncos and Jets are already playing. But yeah, the Colts versus Cardinals should be a good matchup for the Colts. 4-1, a win against Arizona will put the Colts 5-1 to start the season. That's actually insane. So should be pretty good. No Eagles fans didn't like the fact they got crushed by the Giants. There's that too. And then for Major League Baseball, the championship series has finally been set. For the American League, the championship series will be between the Seattle Mariners and the Toronto Blue Jays. Um, Unfortunately, the problem is I'm going to be gone the weekend the World Series starts. So guess what? That means I can't do the World Series, sadly enough. So yeah, no World Series matchup, sadly. So I'll be missing out pretty much the World Series. I guess I could do Game 7 in November, but I have to wait for that schedule to come in. But yeah, the American League Championship Series is between the Mariners and Blue Jays. The Mariners won with two of the best teams in the American League, the Mariners and Blue Jays. The winners of the West for AL West and versus AL East, and then for the NLCS, how about this? The Giants and the Dodgers and Brewers are in the championship series. Pretty important stakes here, absolutely huge. The implications for this are pretty massive, actually. I mean, Blue Jays haven't been to the. A lot of people don't know this, but the Blue Jays have not been to the World Series since 1993. Yes, they haven't been to the World Series since 1993. Actually, I take that back. They haven't been to the World Series since 1922. Actually, no, they haven't been to the World Series since 1993. So they haven't been to the World Series in 32 years. That would be for the Blue Jays. The Mariners, funnily enough, Seattle has never been to the World Series before, so they win the ALCS. They will be in their first ever World Series, which is crazy. They would get to be in the Fall Classic for the first time ever. Oh, nice. Thank you, Typhon. Yes, Mount Jefferson clear days can be seen at 150 miles. Correct. This is Mount Jefferson coming up. We'll be climbing up much higher. That's absolutely correct. And then for the Dodgers, well, they get a chance to go back to the World Series this year. They win the NLCS. They're back in the World Series once again for the second straight year. And then for the Brewers, if they win, it would be their second ever appearance in the Fall Classic. The last time was 1982 when they went to the World Series. Unfortunately for the Brew Crew, they had to face the St. Louis Cardinals in that game in a 7-game series. So that is a pretty big deal. and it would end basically the second longest title drought, pennant drought in baseball. So it's going to be pretty crazy for the World Series. Now, this could be crazy. Now, if I was a fan, I would like to see the Mariners take on the Brewers. That would be probably what I would predict. I would love to see that happen because this is Mount Jefferson, an absolutely massive peak here at Mount Jefferson. It's absolutely. Absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, I need to get back into control. Yeah, this is Mount Jefferson. This is a really cool peak. I didn't put any notes for that peak, but Mount Jefferson's actually the second highest mountain in all of Oregon. It goes all the way to 10,500 feet in elevation. It is a stratovolcano, by the way. The locals call this Mount Siksika by the native populations. It was actually renamed after Thomas Jefferson and was first ascended in 1888 by E.C. Cross and R.L. Farmer, the first people to actually cross over. This is a very popular tourist destination, despite the remoteness, with recreational activities like hiking, backpacking, mountaineering, and photography. And due to its ruggedness, Mount Jefferson is one of the most hardest to reach volcanoes to reach in the Cascades. It's very remote. And it's home to all sorts of plants and animal species. Plants like Douglas fir, hemlock, and various pines and cedar species. While animals include insectivores, bats, rodents, deer, birds, and others inhabit the area. Yes, lots of plant animals do live here in Mount Jefferson. Yeah, this peak is really impressive. Absolutely incredible stuff here. Time to get back to the so we're gonna head back down. We're gonna talk more about Critter Lake here. I want to try and space things out a bit for our national park series. I'll try to speed it. So the national park itself, a lot of this is based off geology. This is extremely important when we talk about this park because that's exactly how Critter Lake was formed. Volcanic activity all throughout the Cascades were fed off the subduction off the coast of Oregon, thanks to Juan de Fuca Plate that slits below the North American Plate, um, which is all part of plate tectonics. Basically, when the volcanic activity, when the plate slits below the North American Plate, causes a process called subduction when it's recycled. However, a lot of this stuff, with heat and compression generated, creates a whole bunch of mountain chains that it spikes up, and then eventually creates the mountain chain that we now know as the Cascade Range. And the volcanoes in these areas are called the High Cascades. Of course, This relates to our national park because around 400,000 years ago, Mount Mazama began its existence pretty much like other mountains here at the High Cascades, as overlapping shield volcanoes. And Mazama was one of those shield volcanoes. Over time, however, alternating layers of lava flows and pyroclastic flows built on top of the overlapping cones until it reached around 11,000 feet in height, which in that case would make it the second highest peak in Oregon. As the volcano grew, many smaller volcanoes and volcanic vents were built around this area just outside the park, what is now the park borders. Chief among those were cinder cone type volcanoes, and although many of them are gone, they erode easily. The park features at least 13 much younger ones that still retain their appearance. However, after a period of dormancy, the volcano became active again, and then around 5700 BCE, Mazama completely collapsed itself during a tremendous volcanic eruption, which it lost 2,500 to 3,500 feet in height. The eruption caused from the volcano, or the large cauldron that depended on prevalent climates, was filled in about 740 years, which eventually became Crater Lake, which is now, our national park. And that eventually became what is now our national park, Crater Lake. The eruptive period that decapitated also laid waste to much of this area and deposited ashes far east to what is now Yellowstone National Park. And as far south as central Nevada, and as far north as southern British Columbia. In fact, according to estimates, it produced more than 150 times as the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. Yes, 150 times more powerful than that. The ash itself from this volcano has since developed a soil type, and soils in this park are brown, dark brown, or dark grayish brown sandy loams, which have plentiful cobbles, gravel, and stones. And they are quite acidic. So you understand about that, about Crater Lake. But yes, geology plays a huge role in this national park, more so than quite other parks, because, well, this was a volcano. So pretty important for you guys to know that when we talk about Crater Lake. So ahead of us is the Three Sister Mountains here in this part of Oregon. There are many volcanoes here in Oregon, but sisters are definitely and that is the Three Sisters. These Three Sisters are part of the Cascade Volcanic Arc. The highest elevation of the Three Sisters is South Sister at 10,663 feet, but they're all about 10,000 feet above sea level. They're very popular for climbing and scrambling, are very popular recreational activities here at the park. Really cool stuff, and people have been around this area for thousands of years. Pretty cool stuff. In fact, they were once proposed to be a national monument, funnily enough, in the 30s, but that never came to be. That is part of a national wilderness. Yeah, we'll be flying through the Three Sisters, and we'll be in them pretty short. Really neat stuff. But yeah, very big stuff going on here as well. Yeah, beautiful park though. Absolutely gorgeous stuff here. Also to our right, there's more of these little volcanoes. That's Black Boot. Black Boot. There's a map. Again, another cone volcanoes. They're all over this range. Now, trust me, we're going to visit a few other volcanic parks through this series, by the way. Crater Lake is not the only one of these volcanic parks we visited. In fact, we visited Mount Rainier last time around. And Mount Rainier was absolutely gorgeous, so I host for this one. Then we're going to visit Hawaii Volcanoes National Park in Hawaii, along with Haleakala later on. Then Lassen Volcanic is there a volcano we'll be visiting as well. Um, let's see what other volcanic things we're going to. I think Denali is a mountain, not really a volcano. Oh, North Cascades also has volcanic activity too. Should be fun. All these volcanic activities. I hope you're all having a good weekend so far and enjoying your week here in our community. I hope you're all having a good weekend here. Hope you're all having a good weekend. So, so if you guys want to know where I'm going to be heading out next week, I'll be heading out to Florida this week. We're going to be going to Panama City Beach on Saturday. So for a week, just to chill. I'm not used to having all those trips happening during the weekday. So, by the way, guys, there's also a link I'm going to put up for the trails and stuff for the app. But yeah, these are some of the hiking trails of National. So here we go, guys. The Three Sisters version. Wow. So once we get past the Three Sisters, we'll talk a little bit more about the park. So another thing I do want to talk about the park, of course, is going to be the climate of Crater Lake National Park. In terms of climate and all that sort of stuff, the national park has a dry summer subarctic climate. Snow is relatively rare at low elevations West Oregon, but common at higher elevations, and that's especially prevalent here at the national park. Um, Measurement at the headquarters shows, which is around 6,500 feet above sea level, shows that snow falls more often here than any other long-term weather station here in the state of Oregon. Winter typically begins in September, runs through June is winter, with an average of 101 days of measurable snowfall. Up to 37 inches of snow have fallen in the park in a single day, 313 inches in a month, and 903 inches a year. Yeah, 900 inches of snow. I'm curious to see what this area looks like during the winter time. So, if you guys are more interested in checking out, I'm going to keep the settings where it is right now. So I'm gonna put on live weather. What it looks like in live weather. I'm just curious. That's basically what Crater Lake snow accumulates in the park at depths to 10-15 feet by early spring, and most of the park roads remain closed through late spring, and snow even lingers all the way into the summer. In July and August, snowfall is uncommon, and one magnitude a day typically falls another. And the coldest month is December, which highs average around 33 degrees and low average around 19 degrees Fahrenheit. August is technically the warmest month, with an average high of roughly 69 degrees Fahrenheit and low of 42 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest recorded temperature at the park was 100 degrees, and the lowest, negative 21 degrees Fahrenheit. Although snow covers Crater Lake National Park for 8 months of the year, the lake itself rarely freezes, actually. It's due to the fact of the onshore flow from the Pacific Ocean is why this is not the case it froze. The last time the lake ever froze was 1949, thanks to a very long cold winter. So, yes, before you ask, this national park doesn't really get cold. It does not freeze, like what many other people. But this here is the Three Sisters coming up to us. Is the Three Sisters. This is North Sister, South Sister, and Broken Top are the Three Sisters. Three Sisters. I'm gonna go ahead and cover this area for a bit. See what our fuel situation is going to be. The right tank is nearly empty. The left tank is. here is the three sisters. Here's the rest of the sisters, of course. Yeah. How cool is that, though? The three sisters, definitely very unique. Part of the scenery here in this part of Oregon. The second lake should be considerably shorter distance, of course, as the rest we'll get to talk about Crater Lake, of course. Once we get past Three Sisters, we'll talk more about the park. Talk about the features and history of the park. Right? Looks like Murphy has a stream schedule for this week. So, here we go. End of our sisters, of course. Beautiful sightseeing in this part of Oregon. Once we head there, we'll head west. Go ahead our right, and we'll head our way down to our first stop very soon. Right. So we're gonna head down over. Now we're gonna head to our first stop, 35 nautical miles. So we're gonna make our way over to our stop. So Crescent Lake Airport is gonna be our first stop. It's gonna be coming up in about 35 nautical miles. Go ahead and talk a bit about more about our national park. There are some really cool features in the national park. We'll go more detail when we visit them. But some of the features that we'll be visiting here today include the Pumice Desert. which is a thick layer of pumice ash leading away from the volcano Mazama to a more northerly direction. Even after 1,000 years, the ash is largely devoid of plant porosity, which means the water drains quickly in the poor soil. Then you have the pinnacles, which, when the very hot ash came to rest in the volcano, it formed 200 to 300-foot gas charged deposits, and eventually all of this formed into what is now known as the pinnacles. Of course, Mount Scott, we're going to be paying a visit to it. The steep andesitic cone, whose lava came from the magma from its chamber, and they call it a satellite cone, but we'll be going on top of it. Rim Drive, which is the most popular road in the park. It takes around through the entire caldera rim. But really cool stuff. Really neat national park. Really neat features. We'll be paying more visit those when we pay the visit. So the history of this national park. A bit of briefly about the history. Local Native Americans actually witnessed the collapse of the mountain and kept the event alive in their legends. One legend of the Klamath people follows the geologic story which emerges from today's scientific research. The legend tells that two chiefs, Lao of the below world and Scale of the above world, pitted in a battle which ended the destruction of Lao's home. The battle was witnessed in the eruption and the creation of what is now Crater Lake. So the first European American prospectors to visit the lake were a trio of gold prospectors, John Wesley Hillman, Henry Klippel, and Isaac Skeeters, and they came upon this lake on June 12, 1853, when they stumbled upon the long sloping mountain while hunting provisions, and they were stunned by the vibrant blue color of the lake, and they named it Deep Blue Lake. And the southwest part of the lake was known as Discovery Point. However, at the time, gold was a bigger deal, so this was forgotten. And the locals preferred the lake Crater Lake. But yes, they were the first ones to know it. But it didn't take until many decades later when William Gladstone Steele, who was an American journalist, and he devoted his life and fortune to the investment of this area being a park, and thank goodness he probably did. And that began in 1870 and took many decades of efforts and stuff, and scientific support, and eventually with the help of fellow geologist Clarence Dutton, did an expedition to the lake in 1886, and they explored the geology and stuff. And thanks to the data and expedition and lobbying, Crater Lake thankfully became a national park on May 22nd, 1902 by Theodore Roosevelt. And thanks to Steele's involvement, they eventually built the Crater Lake Lodge in 1915 and Ren Drive 3 years later. And as a result, it became what it is now today, the national park. But yes, it was all thanks to a hard work and hit of Steele and his lobbying that helped put this area as a national park. And thank goodness, because it is one of the most beautiful parks in the entire system. I don't think you can find many parks better looking than this one. So, beautiful stuff here today. That is about the history and stuff of our national park here currently. So, by the way, guys, it's going to be a while until we do our next national park. But the next national park on our schedule this morning is going to be Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota. Now, Wind Cave is actually a pretty underrated little national park. Wind Cave, very underrated little national park. Very overlooked. I think a lot of people kind of overlook Wind Cave when people think of national parks, but it's actually a really neat little park. Wind Cave is actually it is actually the first cave to be a national park anywhere on Earth. So it's a very historic park, and it's also a breathing cave, which is extremely rare type of cave. And it's the densest cave system in the world too, as well as the sixth longest cave in the world and the third longest in the United States. Um, so really cool little park. Can't wait to visit Wind Cave. The Too bad we can't get into the cave as an aircraft, but we might. But I can park near the cave entrance and we can talk about a bit about the cave itself. So really cool stuff. So our first stop here is going to be pretty short. After this lane, we only got around about under 80 nautical miles left to go, so we don't really have that much more line left to go. Yeah, we're doing quite well here today. So a couple more lakes all across the states. The one we're flying over now is Crane Prairie Reserve Reservoir. They got a lot of these little lakes all across part of Oregon. here we go. Gonna climb up a bit. About this national park here, of course, we're going to be getting to Crater Lake. So, in one of the links I put in the chat is Crater Lake National Park links. What is the All Trails Park? There are multiple great trails, but the most popular hiking trail in the park is the Garfield Peak Trail. It's the top one in the park. And it goes through Garfield Peak, which I think will make a landing at Garfield Peak. If you guys want to, we can actually make a landing here at Garfield Peak as well, which is the most popular trail in the park. Here we go, guys. I think our airport's coming up pretty soon. So, get ready to land here at the park. We also have the National Park link, too. You guys are more than welcome to check out the National Park link. So far, the North Interest Road and Maroon Drive are now closed due to the incoming snowstorm. Not too much far away. In other news as well, for next week's sort of stuff, for the games, obviously, this weekend, I'll talk more about it. But in terms of forward events, I know the Manchester United game's coming Saturday. Next Saturday, of course. But it's not the old game. There's Manchester City Everton. They'll be playing at 10 a.m. on the day I leave. They also have another big game this week. Is besides that one this weekend, Spurs and Aston Villa. Be a big game as well. between North London, one of the top teams in North London, and the best team in the Midlands, Aston Villa. And the next week for La Liga is Espanyol, going to be playing on the Friday, of course. Yep. We're going to make our way here to the airport very shortly. We'll land here. I'll probably refuel for a bit. Refuel just to make sure we have enough fuel for the rest of the legs, and then we'll make our way, complete our on here. Yeah, all the games this week are mainly in the lower leagues. On La Liga 2, so big games, of course. Getting ready for the big. Getting ready for the big. Okay, we're just flying near it. We're flying over it, so There's our airport down here. And we're going to make our way down to our first stop. Here we go. Go. And we'll stop right here. And that will be our first stop of the day here, Crescent Lake Airport. So that will be our first stop. So we'll rest here for just a bit if you guys want to know what our route is and where we're going to be going. Our route for today's flight. So we'll be waiting down here. I know there's quite a bit of people we can trade here. So we're going to get ready to get going very shortly. And we're going to go ahead and get ready for our last national park of the next leg. We're going to go ahead and make our way down to Crater Lake finally. Finally make our way to Crater Lake. And we're up. Good old Savage. Good old. we're going to go ahead through Crescent Lake, and we're going to head to our first place of the national park. We're going to be heading to, we're going to fly over 2 more little peaks, Mount Thielsen. So we're going to make our way down here. Once we do that, we'll head to our first place of the national park, the Pumas Desert. We'll fly over that briefly. We'll have a stop at the Pumas Desert. Let's talk a little bit about some of the activities here at Crater Lake National Park. This park is filled with all sorts of different activities and trails. There are many hiking trails and campgrounds all around the park. Unlicensed fishing, however, is allowed without limitation, size, or species or number. This is different from some of the other national parks, but it's due to the fact that the lake has no indigenous fish, but several species were introduced back in 1888 until all of it ended in 1941. So you can actually fish without a license in this park, which is really different compared to other national parks in here. Swimming is allowed on the lake, and there are boat tours that stop around at Wizard Island at the center cone of the lake, and they operate all during the summer. Of course, in order to get to all that, you need to take a steep walking trail through Wood Trail, which is quite steep. There's no road for cars, trucks, or wagons to lead to the waterfront. And all the boats in this lake had to be delivered via helicopter. There are also, of course, numerous vantage points across observation points that can be very accessible by automobile via Brent Drive, and the highest point of the Crater Lake is Mount Scott at 8,900 feet above sea level, and getting there requires a fairly steep 2.5-mile hike from the Rim Drive trailhead. On a clear day, visibility from the summit could reach 100 miles, and one can see a view taking the entire caldera, which is where we're going to be stopping, by the way. One of our stops is Mount Scott. We will do that. As well. Really cool stuff. And the scenery is fully accessible due to summer months. Heavy snowfalls in the park during fall, winter, and spring forced many road and trail closures. So as a result, the busier months have to be July through October. Are the busiest months. But yes, as I put in the link, there is an all trails link in the chat. But there are many important trails. Of course, Cleveland Cove has to be a must trail for those who haven't get through the water stuff. There's also the Watchman Peak, which goes around 3.6 miles. It's an uphill trail, but you can actually go up top of it and see several important landmarks. And the most popular trail is Garfield Peak, which goes to around 1,000 feet of elevation, and it can see some viewpoints as well. We'll get some amazing view of the park when we. Let's go look outside for just a bit. Taking the beautiful landscape views, of course. Yeah, we're getting closer to Crater Lake. For all those who stay here, I appreciate you all coming here today on this trip. You know, always been busy. So Diamond Peak's coming up pretty soon. So we're ready to be very shortly after we get in the peak. We'll talk about the first our scenery stuff. Talk about the Pumas Desert a bit more of detail. So here is Mount Thielsen, and right by Diamond Lake, of course. Getting pretty close to, we're about 50 nautical miles from our last stop. We're getting very close to Crater Lake itself. Be very excited to finally get our way into the lake at last. So there's Mount Bailey in front of us too, but we're going to be flying past it. So we're going to be going to our first waypoint here today, the Pumas Desert. This is our first feature of the park we're going to be flying to. We're going to be landing here pretty soon. But the Pumas Desert is a dry meadow in Crater Lake. It covers about 3,000 acres of land and located around the north entrance of Park Road. This was a glacial valley before the eruption of Mount Mazama about 7,700 years ago. But one interesting thing about Pumas Desert is that this valley was actually buried over 200 feet of pumice and scoria during the eruptions and subsequent avalanches. The research area was then designated as a research natural area due to the harsh desert-like quality resulting from the porous deposits. And there are only 16 species of plants documented living in this area. If you don't know what pumice is, it's basically powdered volcanic rock of extremely vascular, rough textured volcanic glass. That's what pumice is made of. And scoria is basically cinder, which is dark colored volcanic rock. Formed by ejection of a volcano as a molten blob and cooled in the air to form discrete grains of class. Yeah, Pumas Desert, we're going to be paying there a visit. We'll fly over it soon, as we're doing some mountain flying for a bit. They're absolutely gorgeous, and I think you can see the lake. So, absolutely beautiful scene. We'll get to see more pretty scenery when we go to Lassen. We'll be going to more beautiful stuff when we go to Lassenville. The good thing is I already got the notes done for next Friday's stream, so I don't really have to do any notes for next Friday. Here's guys, there's the Pumas Desert. Here it is. That is our first landmark here of Crater Lake, and I think we just finally arrived at Crater Lake National Park. Finally made it to our park. We'll fly around the rim, take some pictures, but our first real landing spot is going to be Mount Scott. So Mount Scott will be our first landing destination of our destination here today. So here it is, guys, our Pumas Desert. And yeah, you can definitely tell that the Pumas Desert is literally covering the entire thing. It's very distinct. Guys, we officially made it Crater Lake. Once we do that, we'll talk about Mount Scott and make our way over here. This is the Pumas Desert. There's that little desert made of pumice in Scoria. really cool stuff. So that's the Pumas Desert. So yeah, it's completely covered. That is. So we're going to now make our way to Mount Scott, of course. That will be our next waypoint. We'll get to the peak. We'll make our first bush landing of the day here at Mount Scott. Mount Scott is the smallest stratovolcano in a so-called parasitic cone on the flank of Crater Lake. This stratovolcano is around 420,000 years old, and the summit's the highest point within the national park, and the 10th highest in the Oregon Cascades, as it stands about 8,900 feet above sea level. And you can actually get up to this trail through the Mount Scott Trail. This is about 4.3 miles up the trail. Mount Scott first erupted about 420,000 years ago, and it's actually one of the oldest in the complex. It erupted many andesitic lavas before becoming extinct in the late Pleistocene. And due to its remoteness, it actually survived the Lake Mazamon's massive explosion. And many animals live around the slopes of the volcano, including trees like firs, pines, hemlocks, wildflowers like Indian paintbrush, forget-me-nots, wild onions. Buttercups can be found in the mountain. And yes, you can take a trail that's around 2.5 miles long, and it climbs around 1,500 feet up, and you can have some absolutely insane views of Crater Lake. Now, don't worry, guys, if we can't really get too much. We'll go through many more viewpoints of Crater Lake, including Garfield Peak as well. So you guys will see plenty of peaks. We'll go through to Garfield Peak as well. And man, would you look at that. We finally made it to Crater Lake National Park. Oh, the wait was worth it, guys. Look at the scenery here today. Look at the state of this, everyone. Holy goodness. That is Crater Lake. That is indeed Crater Lake. Yeah, we'll actually go through 3 landing spots today. We'll go Mount Scott, and we're going to go make a landing at Garfield Peak. This is one of the most popular trail viewpoints. And then the last one will be Wizard Island. So we'll be having 3 different landing spots for today for our viewing experience. Don't worry, we'll get plenty of pictures of. But man, is this a gorgeous view. There it is, guys. Got the Mount Scott. Absolutely gorgeous. This here is Mount Scott, everyone. Just gorgeous. Here's Mount. Top of the peak, and then we'll make a landing. There it is. Our climbing really. Here we go. We're just gonna up, up. Here's guys. Mounts. Uh, there we go. Look at that. That's Scott. Look at wow. Oh man, what a view. That is from Mount Scott. The view. And this is absolutely just breathtaking. Oh man, what a view. Absolutely breathtaking. Yeah, this has been the view of Crater Lake National Park from Mount Scott. Just breathtaking. Bet you all probably agree with me on this one. It's just breathtaking. It takes your breath away. And from there, you can see the other parts of Oregon. Let's go ahead and cover the next. And let's go ahead and cover the next part of the flight. So our next waypoint after Mount Scott is going to be Phantom Ship. It's a little scenery here in the national park. This small island here in Crater Lake, the natural rock formation pillar that derives its name from a resemblance of a ghost ship, especially during foggy and low light conditions. It is mainly formed from andesite rock that dates back to 400,000 years ago due to hydrothermal activity. It is situated in the southeast end of Crater Lake and projects more than 200 meters out from the wall of the caldera. It's about 500 feet by 200 feet in size. And vegetation is similar on this island to that of Phantom Island, except for lodgepole pine. So, pretty cool little island. Really neat little geographic feature. So we'll get a chance to see Phantom Ship. We'll see Phantom Ship, of course. Yeah, we're gonna now enter a bit of the caldera itself. Be a Crater Lake, man, absolutely. We'll have this here is down below us is little old Phantom ship. Down below us. So this little island right here, that is Phantom ship. So we're about to enter into the there itself. This little guy right here is known as Phantom ship. And how cool is that? That is Phantom ship. Now we're going to go up to Garfield Peak. We're going to make a landing here. This time I'll just get a picture with the plane itself. Up, up. No, now, Garfield Peak is the most popular viewpoint in the national park. And on clear days, you can see a lot of Crater Lake. There's Applegate Peak. So we're mainly going to visit Garfield. So, up, and okay. So this here is Garfield Peak. Now, this trail, in order to get to Garfield Peak, you need to climb up a 3.5-mile trail. The trail itself is 3.5 miles round back. So it's about 1.7 miles up through the park, but it's one of those popular ones in the trail. So this is the view of Garfield Peak. Pretty cool stuff. I'm going to take a picture of the plane here at Crater Lake. Take one here. Beautiful shot, of course. And one of Mount Scott in the back. So yeah, this is Garfield Peak. Very popular little peak here. Really cool stuff. And if you look more in person, yeah, you can see the entire lake. Just absolutely. So of course, now if you notice this little place right here, this place to our left is Wizard Island. Now this one's really cool. Wizard Island is a volcanic cinder cone which forms an island around the west end of Crater Lake. Top reaches 6,900 feet above sea level, about 755 above the average surface of the lake. And it's capped by a volcanic crater about 500 feet to 100 feet. It's nicknamed the Witch's Cauldron by William Gladstone Steele, who also gave the island later its name. And this area was formed around 7,000 years ago and last erupted 4600 BC. But in order to access the island, by the way, it's only available during the summer months when boat tours are in operation and they depart from Cleveland Cove and they circle the lake, stopping in the south end of the island. And passengers on the boat trips early may choose to disembark on the island, but must be prepared to spend the entire day on the island if boats are too full to take on passengers. Yes, you can take hiking trips on Wizard Island too. Really neat area, a really cool place. We'll be landing here as well. But like I said, there's some really great trails here. Very pretty. This is gorgeous national park. We're going to go ahead and get ready for takeoff here. We'll go here and we'll make, this is our last landing stop of the day. Now, so we'll make our way to Wizard Island. So here is Wizard Island. Now, if we land here, we get a very unique view of the park. Going through Wizard Island, you get a very unique view of the park. So, really cool stuff. Yeah, this is Wizard Island. This right here is the Witch's Cauldron. Will not land here, but here it is. Witch's. Now this is Wizard Island. So there is the Witch's Cauldron. All this is a crater. That's the Witch's Cauldron. And over here is the rest of the lake. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool stuff. We'll land here. Of the plane. Yeah, you can now look from inside the lake. See the viewpoint from here. Yeah, that's how deep Witch's Cauldron. So we only have one final waypoint left in this trip, and we have one final waypoint left on this, and we're going to and our last waypoint and our final stop here is Union Peak. Is Union Peak going to be our last waypoint? So the Rim Drive, by the way, that takes us to this island, by the way, is known as Rim Drive. And this was completed back in 1926 to 1941. And this has been a brainchild of Steel for years. But this Rim Drive is currently 33 miles loop, 33 miles length. It's a part of the UNESCO. It's part of the National Register of Historic Places in 2008. And it follows the Caldera Rim around Crater Lake. Due to the unique engineering surrounding park landscape, it's part of the National Register of Historic Places. And there are eight main areas with roadside parking are different observation points. At Pumas Point, Skellhead, Cloud Cap, and Kerr Notch just off the road. And short trails lead to the other 4 observation points on the road. And this is one of the most popular activities here at the park. I mean, it makes sense. Crater Lake is an absolutely stunning place. That's why you definitely want to drive. Now, our last waypoint here today is Union Peak, and this is the last. We're not going to land here, but we're going to fly past it. But our last waypoint here in the park is Union. This heavily eroded shield volcano in the Cascade Range is about 7 miles southwest of Crater Lake. Ice Age glaciers eroded away most of the flanks of the volcanoes, leaving the numerous cirques around the central glacial horn, and it was formed in the same process that formed the other mountains in the area, like the Three Finger Jack, Mount Washington, and Howlock Mountain. And it is located within the national park, and it was actually used as a post for summit fire lookouts from the 30s to the 50s. You can visit Union Peak, but we're not going to land here today. So that is our last slide for today's trip to Union. So very excited for it. Visit here. So yeah, what an absolutely beautiful park. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was an absolutely beautiful national park. I'll post the VOD for it later today. Yeah, here's Union Peak. That, and now we'll make our way to our last stop. So thank you guys so much for coming along here today on this Sunday morning. I know quite a bit of stuff was going on, of course. Been very excited to way. So it depends. If Sergeant Staff's still on, I'm probably gonna raid his channel. He hasn't streamed in a while, so I think I'll check out his stream unless he raids me. Here it is, guys. Prospect State coming up very soon. So here, guys, we're about one step closer to making our way down. Here it is, guys. Our airport's coming up very shortly. And we're down. That's it, everyone. That wraps up our stream here today. We're going to park right here. And well, that's it, everyone. We made it to the end of our stream here today. Welcome to Prospects Airport. So that's it, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming here today. I hope you guys enjoyed the National Park series. We're probably going to say hello to Sergeant Staff, who hasn't been streaming in a while. So, guys, we'll be back on Friday for our next game day flight. We'll do Manchester United versus Liverpool. So we'll see you all in Bristol soon. Take care, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And see you soon. Goodbye, everyone.